look rough today. You look good, I don't.
Well,
I'll survive. Whoa, was it taping? Welcome to spring. Today is the first or second day of spring. It's March 21st, 2011. And it's Visual Radio. I think it's number 503 with my guest, William Lychak. Did I say that right?
you sure did.
The Architect of Flowers. It's William's second book on, say it for me, Houghton.
Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
Why do they have three names now instead of just Houghton Mifflin?
Continual conglomeration.
I
Yes.
know.
Yeah, they bought Harcourt recently.
William, I read this on the treadmill. I read books on the treadmill.
Very good.
And it's, I like the feel of the paper. And I often say this to my authors, if the book, I like the feel of your book, I like the size of it, it's one of these handy ones that you can take on the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the big bulky, or the,
Yep.
it's great. And did you help design the?
An author has very little to do with the cover at all. I mean, I think you have veto rights, but there's very little you can say about it. So actually, no. And same with the wasp eater. The trim size is all decided by the publisher.
The Wasp Eater is the first book from William Lychak, and it came out in?
2004.
And what's it about?
I never knew my father, so it's trying to piece together his stories. I met him twice. He died when I was 10, and my parents separated when I was 2. So I grew up with all these stories, and it's ultimately a story about a boy trying to make room in his heart for his father, and find room in his father's heart for himself. So.
Can I ask you what those two meetings were like, if you remember them?
They lived on a farm, so my father had a very bad car accident, and his leg was fused straight. In those days, instead of fixing the knee, they would actually fuse the leg. So I remember my most salient memory of my father was he had this huge boot with a 6-inch sole, and he had to hobble around. And it was just a big farm, and my mother and he would go inside, and I was left alone on the farm to play with the dogs and get in trouble. But it was fascinating it whetted my appetite for him, and I never knew I missed him at all until I just kept writing about him. And that book is about him, and this book sort of resurrects some of the stories surrounding my mother and he, and then this is about a boy and a father, and this is about my mother and my father.
Ah. Oh, so even though The Architect of Flowers is a collection of short stories, that's correct, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they're different.
Yeah, they're all different stories, but there are recurring characters. The characters in this story, in the novel, come back in this collection.
I knew about this, but I didn't have this, so
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's totally
Interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
That's a unique spin on things. So did you have a lot of photos of your father?
I do, or I did. And
you still do?
And even in the back, they have these author things about the book, so I'll have photos. But I never knew him. So that was my father. That's my mother and father.
And what was he in the military?
Me and him. Yeah, he was in World War II.
It's a cute photo. I mean,
dad
and his little baby.
Yeah, he's asleep and I'm looking. So anyway,
that's your titles are dramatic and different. The Wasp Eater. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, the brain's clicking. Wasp Eater.
The kid eats bugs and the most scary bugs he knows are wasps. He collects them in front of your attic window. You'll find all the dead wasps. He'll eat those in sort of a way to inoculate himself against fear. So if he can ingest this fear, it can protect him against the fear of his father or his fear of his father leaving, etc.
Wow. Good night, Mr. Renfield.
Yes.
You know the line?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
I have Dracula memorized.
Yeah.
Dracula.
He collects lives, compounds them by feeding the flies to the spiders and eating the spiders.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm too busy memorizing the book to realize what Renfield was doing. The wasp eater. So, okay, so it wasn't live wasps that this child eats. And you don't have to answer this one. Did you eat bugs?
Of course.
You did?
Of course. Research.
Chocolate-covered ants.
Well, I've been to Asia and eaten grasshoppers and all the bugs that they have. But for
They
this,
eat them live.
They sort of fry them up and with hot sauce on them.
The poor things.
Well, a good source of protein. But yeah, almost anything in the book you end up doing, just so you get the details right.
I'm a firm believer in fantasy. I was driving Alvin Lee of 10 Years After around doing PR. Remember 10 Years After?
Of course.
Okay. And I said, there are two young ladies out there who adore you. He goes, the fantasy will have to suffice. That's it for me with these bug eating and I'm sorry,
Yeah. That's right.
But the Architect of Flowers, what does the title mean?
At some level, it's about the story. It's the title story of the collection. The story is about a hybridizer who makes flowers. He can create virtually any flower he desires, but it's also about the art of writing what you hope are beautiful stories, or stories that sort of touch bottom with some emotion and can undo a loss or a deprivation through a scent or a sense. There's a part where the hybridizer wants to make his wife happy by a softness or a tone or smell. So that's what drives him. And I think I wanted that. I always had that as the title of the collection long before I had this story. And I just knew.
I was reading a stand of fables, and you have Once Upon a Time, and I think, oh, that's charming. And I'm reading To the Farm, and you have Once Upon a Time. Mm. Did you notice? Do you often?
Once Upon a Time is a trick to let your imagination sort of take off. Yeah, and To the Farm was the last story I wrote, and in that voice, she's literally saying Once Upon a Time. I think we lived on the Chautauqua River, my husband and I. But it literally, these stories that involve the past are conjurings from. They are literally Once Upon a Time because they don't exist any longer.
The Chautauqua River.
It's in Baltic, Connecticut.
Oh, it's not in this story.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and you wrote it through a woman's eyes.
Mm-hmm. That's the Anna character from here. If that's at all interesting, yeah. She starts talking in this book.
She starts talking in The Wasp Eater.
No, this one. She's quiet, she's quieter.
She's in here, though.
Yep.
Okay. So this is good to know. So as you're watching the show, if you're intrigued by what we're talking about, The Wasp Eater, really, you should probably pick this up first. And this is a novel.
It is.
Okay, so there's a full novel, but some of the characters show up in the short stories. But me, like I told Suzanne Vega, I liked her book because I could dive into it, and I love having a short story book. Mm-hmm. It was inspiring to me. So I will say right away, I said, oh, cool, I like, it drew some kind of attention because I like being able to dive into a story without starting at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So you like that too?
I do.
Because,
I like it, you have different moods. So sometimes you're in the mood for a longer piece, and sometimes you just have 12 minutes, and you want the best 12 minutes you have.
Cool, or I'm on the treadmill, and sometimes I spend 45 minutes on the treadmill, but I want to, and sometimes I think.
Right.
I'll shut my eyes and consider, and then a friend will come over in the gym and say, "Are you awake?" I'm like, "Yes, you're bothering me." But I like to absorb things, so but Yoko Ono says, it's always best to start at the start. I don't know, I like to dive in. I'm glad you told me I'm not crazy.
Well, Chekhov says that as well. Dive right in the middle of the story. When he advises students or friends, it was always like, start 12 pages into your story.
You teach at a college right now.
I do.
And you've taught at other colleges.
I have.
The interaction with students and the whole creative process, it must impact the stories too, in a way.
Of course. Because part of the issue when you're teaching, I mean, you want all the competence things, but you want to try to find a way to nudge a student into something exemplary. Like anyone, you start to think like anyone can write a competent story. Mm-hmm. Now, how do I make it extraordinary? So you're always trying to push yourself in those directions too. And teaching is just a way that, a focused way of learning for myself. So anything I say in the classroom, I'm saying to myself. Anything I'm listening or hearing in the classroom, I'm applying to my own work as well. When it's going well, it feels like a total scam because your needs are getting met, the students' needs are getting met, you're making a living, and it's a wonderful way to do it.
College is interesting too because at that point people are on the next level. They're not in school where they're in the high school where they're still thinking and picking up. Now they're kind of like getting ready to launch into life, so they want to start writing right away. Mm-hmm. They're like professional.
Right.
And so it's a whole other vibe where you probably see the creative process just flowing in all these different faces.
Oh, and that's magic. I mean, they really have access. And when they're firing on all cylinders, they're really just they've got something almost you don't have as a teacher any longer, which is just this innocence and this ability to take risks. And you always have to remind yourself as you go further along, like to have fun with it and to use your skills as a way to stretch your boundaries. Really, I think. But I always tell my students, and this is what I learned from my mentors, to just care about your works. Care so much that you don't care if anyone else cares, which might make them care, and it actually makes you care if they care. It's backwards sort of logic.
Well, A Stand of Fables I found very intriguing is a good word, but I found it brought me into a world, and I started thinking, and I don't want to talk too much about the story, although the story's really fun. It really makes you think. And the woman, I began to think that she was otherworldly. Mm-hmm. And that's...
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So...
and that's literally a fable. I wrote those. There was a writer, William Maxwell, and he was an old New Yorker editor for 40 years. We became friends, and he would write fables. And I was an editor at a place called New England Review, and I asked him to send me some work. And he did, he kindly enough did, and there were some fables, and those were an answer to him. So I wrote them to him, and I got lucky, they were picked up in Best American Short Stories, and they've had a lot of a life. Sometimes these things take a life of their own.
Well, that was my next question, so you read my mind, as often happens on visual radio, because we're going along those thoughts. Were some of these published in magazines?
All but 2 or 3 were, yes.
And did the 2 or 3, did you write them specific for the new book?
I wrote them so they're so sticky, so hot off the press, I guess, that I didn't have time to send them out. Even the last 2 stories I wrote for the collection were Chickens and To the Farm. So, even my reading copy is all marked up because it's...
Your reading, that's your reading copy?
Yeah.
And you mark it up, to...
When I give a reading. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because you hear things better.
I don't understand. You hear things better.
The stories continue to change. They aren't static. Once you see a book, it's still in. If it were permissible, you would keep changing it. So there's a way that it's just done, and you should leave it alone. And I would never. Nothing could induce me to go back and revise the book. But when you're presenting it in public, you tend to change the story.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does now, but and on top of that, you've got every single person that reads it's going to have a different feel of the scenery. Your mind is going to create its own. So all the readers are creating worlds, and you're changing the worlds on them. So if they go back and read it, and there's if a second volume comes out,
yeah, not drastically. You know, it's not like you don't want to tamper with like Thunder Road. You know, if you're Springsteen, you don't want to tamper with their expectations too much, I guess. Not to conflate myself with Springsteen, but.
Well, I mean, you know, I wouldn't demean yourself that way. I'm sorry. I walked out on Springsteen in '73.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh.
I saw him at Cask and Flagon over there at Fenway Park, the little nightclub.
Yeah.
My guitarist in '73 said, "You got to see this guy. He's great. He's great." I go, "I don't see it anymore. It's not a good night." He had broken a string. I remember that. Springsteen broke a string, and I'm there waiting for this greatness, and it just didn't materialize for me. I never went back.
Wow. Interesting.
But, you know, no, so I like what you're saying. I find that fun, and I like fun, so that the stories can keep changing good.
Well, you always have to, when you're reading them especially, I think you have to always protect the concentration. So you're on the page, and your mind, sometimes your mind will be drifting, or you'll be thinking, you won't even be present. And I think the real key is to try to be present when you're presenting.
With DVDs now, they have alternate endings on movies are finally coming out.
Sure.
Which is like cool, you know. You know, there are many movies that deserve an alternate ending. On a Kindle, you can actually have 5 different versions of your.
That's the truth. That's interesting. I
Like-
bet that'll happen.
Yeah, because we have 5 different mixes of records,
Sure.
which it took a long while for that to happen. I was hoping that would happen earlier. It wasn't until CD when the record labels and the box sets and mix 1 or mix 2, or Jimi Hendrix, all they've got left is different
Right.
mixes or different takes,
Of the
but
same.
they're always
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
And so a remix, the Architect of Flowers, the remix.
That'd be a hoot.
We haven't even got into the book yet, and we're talking about the remix. When did the PR start for the book? Like yesterday or a month ago, or?
About a month ago, maybe more.
And where have you spoken at?
I was at Newtonville Books yesterday. I was down at the Free Library in Philadelphia last week with Charles Baxter and Jess Rao. We gave a reading together. Then I was at Barnes & Noble. And I was just picked for there's a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers Award.
I didn't know that.
So I was picked as one of the summer choices. So I'm starting to get some media attention through Barnes & Noble, or at least invitations to stores.
Have them bring video cameras in and send us the video footage.
They do that in a lot of stores now.
Yeah.
In Andover, I know they do it.
They should.
I'll be reading in Andover.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
Yeah.
get the footage and
Yeah.
keep dates. And it's like today I did visual radio, but no, because it's always fun. If you'd like to do a reading at any point during this show right now, just say, hey,
Anytime, I would love to. So.
and we're on the double. That's like the 2 scenes of us, and that one is you. Yeah, if you'd like to read, maybe our director can put the camera on you, or you can just read. And
I can just read to this guy,
yeah.
right?
No, you'll be reading to that guy.
Okay.
No, that's all right. Just sit there and read.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. I'll do the Once Upon a Time thing for you. Here we go. This is the start of To the Farm. Funny the things that come back to you. I'm standing in Putnam Supermarket the other day, little old lady just minding my own business, just waiting in line at the deli counter, a couple of guys getting sandwiches in front of me. And then all of a sudden, past the lobsters, I see this other tank all dark and green. Few steps closer, few more, and my stomach goes with the pull. Whole tank filled with eels. Black and squirming against the glass, that raw stink of river and weeds, and this urge rising from inside my throat. Comes out half laugh, half groan, and the men at the counter turn and smile. I'm over at the tanks by this point, arms open wide to the men, asking them what kind of person. I mean, who in their right mind would eat these things anyway? Guys all grin like I'm a little bit crazy, which is fine by me. Don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I have come to embrace this cranky old womanness of mine. Man behind the counter, wrapping the sandwiches, saying he's had them before, the eels. They're not so bad. To which I say, bah. And they laugh, and now I drift back and start to tell how, once upon a time, back when we lived on the Shetucket River, my husband Bob used to run drop lines off the docks, bits of fresh chicken on the hooks every morning. Who knows, I say, but I think he was thinking turtles. Never caught any fish that I remember. All I know is I'm home from work early one day, sunny summer afternoon down by the water for me, and somehow I get it into my head to see if anything's on the line. Bob's not home naturally, so I'm there on the dock alone, expecting weeds or bad chicken on the hook, and then something starts fighting and fighting, line going all zigzagging and sharp, and I'm pulling it closer and closer and leaning down for one last heave when foop, this big cold splash wraps itself wet and heavy around my arm.
Foop.
Foop.
You created a word. Bill, thank you very much. You've got a really good voice for your stories.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, and I hope our viewers appreciate that. That was very nice. Thank you. Do you get on a plane and go to a reading and maybe start jotting down a new story, or do you do it on? That's another question. Do you write or do you type?
This will be a bad joke. It's like an alcoholic. I don't want to specialize. So I do whatever I can. I've got 3 little kids, all under the age of 6, so I can't be precious about any way I do it. I just got to get the work done. So I write longhand, I have a typewriter, I write a lot on a typewriter. I don't think computers are that efficient. I spend a lot of time, you can fuss things to death, but you can't often fuss them to life. So I start fussing.
Good point.
Fuss the crap out of things, sorry for my French. But so I do it, I just try to get the sentences down. I don't, any way I can.
You've got 3 kids?
Yep.
Can we ask the ages?
Frederick is 6, and then I have a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, Burgess and Will, who are 3.
Burgess and Will. So all boys?
Burgess is a girl.
Burgess is a girl.
Yep.
I wasn't being presumptuous. I was going to guess. And then...
Yeah, it's an unusual name.
Oh, that's cool. So Daddy has to write, but then there's...
Yeah, so we're storytellers, so we're making a story called Bad Dad, because all the bad things Dad has done with the, like I once locked the twins in the house by accident, and Frederick and I were outside. It was snowy. We didn't have our clothes on. Our winter clothes on.
Yeah.
And so the twins were locked in the house, and I tried to bust the doors down, and I tried to. It was tempered glass as the glass, and I'll be damned if you can't break tempered glass. And at once I'm relieved, but at once I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get them into the house? So there's a lot of things like just my ineptitude as a father. Because I never knew, again, back to the story, I never knew my father, so I'm able to, I need to create fatherhood backward and forward at the same time, if that makes sense.
Which, yeah, it does make sense. And I'm thinking, where you didn't know your dad, having 3 kids, you're going to be very aware of that they need their father.
Yeah, right. And maybe that's my role in life, is just to be a good father. And we'll even joke, and my kids all know the story, so it'll be like, we'll be bike riding with Frederick or something, and I'll be saying, oh, this brings back so many wonderful memories. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I used to do this with my father. And he'll be like, you didn't have a father, Dad. Or you didn't have a dad.
He'll say that?
Yeah. So, and all the twins will say that too.
And then you turn to him saying, that's why I named you after a Patti Smith song.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'll go, nope, that explains everything.
Did you name him after a Patti Smith song?
No, but I know that song.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous song.
Was for her husband.
Yeah, who died.
Yeah, Fred of the. I used to know these things off the top of my head. Fred of the MC5, was it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love Patty.
And that memoir is amazing.
You know, Patti Smith and Lou Reed are two of the great essayists, and they don't do enough of it.
Yep. And Lou Reed thought of his albums as novels.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He was, I think it was Delmore Schwartz who was his mentor, and he said become a writer, but he concentrated in music, and he thought each one of those Velvet Underground especially.
I've got a bunch of Delmore Schwartz books because of Lou, but I don't pick them up. I listen to Lou. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you want to have your heroes, you know, early inspirations. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have Delmore on the shelf.
Absolutely.
But I'll read Lychak. Because, you know, here you are in the studio in the flesh. So, you know, the story with your son Frederick, the snow and the twins locked inside, that's good food for a new story.
I'd like to do a book, or even a children's book, Bad Dad.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's catchy and it would be interesting.
But
and
you're not
fun.
a bad dad. You're,
no, but
you're
it's fun.
aspiring to be a very good dad.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, there's always a fine line.
Yeah, but we're only human, and, you know, we can only do what we can do.
I think that's absolutely right, and that's something I've just starting to come to terms with now. You know,
as long as people don't leave kids in the car or animals in the car, I'm fine with them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I get really outraged if I see an animal in the car, especially on a hot day.
My mother has those, you know, those flyers you stick in there, under the windshield wipers.
Oh, they're flyers?
Yeah, they're flyers that, you know, if she sees a dog, and then she'll call the police and.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's nice to know. I got to find those flyers.
The big red flags.
Excellent. Your mother, is she in these parts?
She's in Putnam, Connecticut.
Okay.
Which is the northeast corner, right on the Rhode Island-Massachusetts border.
So she must love getting the books.
I think so.
You know,
I wrote that book for her, pretty much. I mean, it's like a lot of, like the eel story, like I just read, that was an actual occurrence. She pulled in, my father ran drop lines off the dock, she pulled it up, an eel wrapped around her arm, and...
Oh, so it's a real, okay.
So that story's been rattling around in my imagination since I was 6, and it finally found a place and a home in this collection, and...
She didn't kill the eel in the bathtub, I hope, in real life.
It's an well, what happens is they bring the eel into the bathtub, they ultimately eat the eel. It's not about the eel per se, but it becomes a story. The eel escapes from the bathtub, disappears, and she vows great harm upon the eel and my father, and starts pouring ammonia and starts pouring all these things on it, and my father takes it up to the farm to eat it. And then it becomes a catalyst for memory. And I get a little tired of reading stories that how do I say this, that don't give you a reason to live in a way, that confirm your what we see in the news, confirm that it's hopeless. And so I've started writing stories that I feel are full of hope. So this is a story that's full of hope and full of gratitude. The last word of the story is gratitude, and I think that's one of the dominating feelings I have. It's just like, I'm grateful for the days. You know, I don't always demonstrate it to people, but I am.
I fear everything will be okay. I think Arif Mardin said that, the great producer, Bette Midler. Mm-hmm. I fear everything will be okay.
That's a great line.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. My publicist has one from a friend, keep calm, carry on.
We have to. Calvary. Not cavalry, but Calvary. Can you tell us about that?
It's a cemetery where my grandfather's buried, and the boy and his father go to visit the cemetery his mother's died, and he's visited by a ghost of the mother in the story. And he wishes that he his father would just leave him in the cemetery, and he could slough off his own skin and be like the father would just carry this disguise or this costume of a boy behind him, and he would, as a ghost, the boy as a ghost would just stay amongst the gravestones with his mother.
And it's pages 99 to 104, so if you like ghost stories, that's the great thing about short stories. You can...
The short one, yep.
You know, when Brokeback Mountain came out, I never heard of the writer before, and then I picked it up at a library. They have these library sales. So, and, you know, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. It's like a book of short stories, but one became a movie. And that's just kind of neat, even though that movie, again, you're talking about optimism. That movie was so depressing. You know, why do these movies have to be like such downers? Because I was so looking forward to it, and Ang Lee and everything, and Ang Lee's starting to lose me in the way he's translating things. And it's like, you know, oh, I'm going to tell you, tomorrow I'm interviewing Duncan Jones, David Bowie's son.
Wow.
He's got this movie, Source Code.
Cool.
And I like it. So where Brokeback Mountain was a kind of a letdown because it just got so depressing, Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal, who was in Brokeback Mountain, he keeps appearing in this train to stop a bomb. Well, no, not to stop a bomb, but to find the bomber. And it's great because it just keeps going back to the train, and I really like it. And I'm saying, this is so good. David Bowie must have directed this. But Duncan Jones, his son, is really talented.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to the movie coming out and to this interview tomorrow.
Yeah.
But my whole point of that was the short stories, you know, and how directors can take it. And any one of these stories, even if it's 5 or 6 pages long, can become a movie. And is there any one story in here that you think lends itself to film?
The first story, Stolpestad, and Chickens. I think Chickens would be
The first two.
the first two.
You know, if I had the rights in a big film company behind me, I would produce and direct, you know, a Stand of Fables. I think that one could be really well filmed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imagery that could come up.
Yeah, almost like a Roan Inish. Do you know the Roan Inish film?
No.
The John Sayles, yeah. But again, very story-like and once upon a time aura around it, yeah.
But I could use a lot of like subtle silver in it, and then the silverfish, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, there could be, yeah.
Take it, it's yours.
Well, yeah. You know, I would love to, because we're all movie-oriented people here.
We are. The screen is so addictive. How can you?
But especially here at Wingham,
Sure.
where the Rotondi brothers, Todd Rotondi, one of our members, is in the movie Howl.
Cool.
The Allen Ginsberg film.
Yeah, yeah.
He plays Jack Kerouac.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and his brother, Andrew Rotondi, is editing a movie right now. And as I told you off screen, he knows about you. I directed Marty Ballin live on the Esplanade. So we all have this in us here. And you know.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, if I get knocked off when I went out the door, you can do a documentary with all the 500 episodes, and you know, but it's
a real portrait of, I mean, I bet. I mean, it'll be a very interesting thing to take the 500 and do a portrait of yourself. Or somebody take that material and do a portrait of you.
Bill, the pounds just melt away when you go back in time. Speaking of photos, this is a really interesting photo of you because you look different here in real life. And I would have liked it if they blew the photo up a little bit.
Yeah.
But you did a session in New York?
With Marianne Ettlinger, yes.
Marianne
Ettlinger.
Okay.
She's done everyone. You know, Cormac McCarthy and Android Abuse, everyone, pretty much.
So I wonder if she'll do like a book of her.
She has.
Yeah.
She totally has.
So you're in the collection now.
I'm in the something. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and it was I'd never really sat for anyone like that before, and it's all a learning process, and it's a skill set writers don't have. Like even appearing here, it's like a skill set you try to learn and you try to get better at, but it's a slow accumulation. Like, because most of the time you just sit, and if you're really working, you're just sitting quiet alone with paper around you. That's it, and some books. So the rest of it becomes this other animal and this whole total separate skill set. Even sitting for a photograph, how not to be self-conscious and how to be.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting.
Playing to the camera.
Something.
See, but now you're having fun playing with our cameras. These cameras are fun to play with. I like this much better than still photography
Yeah.
because it's just fun. We have fun here, and he hasn't thrown the water bottle at me yet, so I guess the interview's going well. Preach it, Brother Billy, preach it. And would Brother Billy be you?
It would be.
Ah, see?
Yep. I worked at a magazine, religious-minded monthly, and it's the biggest, after Reader's Digest, it's the biggest circulation magazine in the country. And I would rewrite these, they were all first-person accounts, and I would rewrite them. That was my job as an editor, just to make them smooth and touch bottom. And one of the stories is about this couple who pick up and leave for Peoria. And I did that story for This American Life, the radio show. And
This American Life, and what is it air on, PBS?
it's PRI, Public Radio International.
Is PRA affiliated with PBS, or it's a separate entity?
I don't even know.
Okay, so you read it on
Yeah,
Oh, cool. Where'd you do that, New York?
I did it in New York. Yep, went to the studio, did it.
So you were the editor?
I was the editor of this of one of the editors of the magazine.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so as editor, you went and read someone's story?
Oh no.
Oh, it was your story?
My story. Yeah.
Your story. Oh,
Yep.
okay, cool.
So I did it. That story actually got me sort of fired from the job. So
Really?
They didn't want it tells a lot of, it's a kind of a whistleblowing story, so it tells
Okay.
a lot
All
about
right.
the inner workings of what I call the Epiphany Factory.
I don't know anything about whistleblowers.
But they were not happy about what I had done.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it's a sweet story, and in some ways it's affirmative, and something about the commodification of religion to me. I was raised Catholic, and I feel a spirituality, but something about the commodification of it, and even the Catholicism and stuff, makes me worry about it and makes me believe less and so that was an answer to my beliefs.
Oh yeah, if you want to do some Catholic bashing, man, I'm all for it. But I'm Viglione. I grew up in St. Agnes, which looks like a prison camp. If you look at the grammar school with the little guard towers and everything, it's right up the road here in Arlington.
Yeah.
But it's like you have a point. It has to. People are becoming spiritualists. I'm reading that they're leaving, designated churches.
Mm-hmm.
When I grew up, your kind of religion was handed to you by your family.
Right.
And nowadays, people are becoming spiritual and finding their own path, which I think is good.
I think it's great, especially when you get some of the conflicts going on in the church, like especially the Catholic Church. I was just in Philadelphia, and all the priests that were let go and are being indicted, and there was a priest in our church, and one of my friends or an acquaintance committed suicide. He was, it was an abusive priest, and so it's
Over that.
yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, it can ruin a person's life, and you're given such access and authority as this figure, and you just think, gosh, I'm grateful it doesn't happen more often. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's the wolves in the hen house, and the second thing that they're in, as you said, a position of authority, and that's to take advantage of that.
And you're more weak. You come as a supplicant in this in a form of weakness, and they just have all the power and all the. And you're especially and I think of myself, like how vulnerable I must have been without a father, and kind of thirsty for paternal, and I was always borrowing fathers, so it would have been natural if somebody had sort of taken me under their wing and whatever, but it did.
So you were almost a prime candidate.
Of course.
Yeah.
So you identify with that. Sure.
And none of us knew. I remember a certain priest giving a sex ed class, and then I found out years later from a friend that, he was an abuser. And it was like, whoa, because my friend had been abused by him.
Yeah.
But the main one over there in St. Agnes was one of the first that kicked this whole thing off, and he used to come over our house for dinner. Mm-hmm. But he left us alone because we had a very strong family.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
Right.
But, he's at like my sister's wedding, and I'm talking about Christian Science, and he's like kind of chastising me for reading the works of Mary Baker Eddy, and it's like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Meanwhile, at CYO basketball, they'd have all the kids lined up for hernia tests, and you're like, what are they doing hernia tests on the kids for? You know what I mean? That's a friend story. He told me that.
But my problem with the church is like, Jesus went in and knocked over the tables of the money changers, and here they are with the collection basket, which is the total opposite of what Jesus was all about.
Sure.
So, but enough of that.
Yeah.
We're having fun here. You see, the show, the subtitle is always digression. And because I just want you to have fun. And I want to talk a little bit more about your life. How did you get started in writing?
I was in college, and there was a writing conference at my school. I went to Connecticut College, and so William Styron, Joan Didion, Norman Mailer, really big names came to my school. And I was raised in a small blue-collar town that I didn't know that you could actually become a writer. I thought they just came from,
right
on top of Parnassus and was given to us.
I think we all felt that way.
Yeah. So suddenly it felt approachable. These people felt they did great work, but they were human, which I thought made them more attractive in a way. And I just remember I think it's the right way for me to think. It's a perfect pace for thinking for me, for writing. You can really touch bottom with an idea. You can really do great work, I think.
And what you just said about them being human. Now, see, I have a theme called Idols Come Crashing, and when you meet some of your favorite heroes, in the setting of visual radio, it's great because when you meet your heroes, they're still your heroes.
Right.
But if you interact with some of your heroes, and you see the flaws, the idols come crashing, and you'd rather them be the person that made this hit record and just have them on the pedestal.
Right. The fantasy you were saying earlier, the fantasy of the person.
Yeah. Alvin Lee. Alvin Lee's still on the pedestal, man. That was a dream for me. The sad thing, Bill, kids today don't know 10 years after. They don't know who Alvin Lee is, the fastest guitarist alive. And here I am driving the guy around. He's one of my heroes. It was a thrill for me. But for me to think that kids don't know who this hero of mine is, it's mind-boggling. Because we knew our parents' favorite records.
Yep.
And these kids today don't.
Right. Oh.
What do your kids listen to?
Laurie Burkham and, little kids' music, so... and I also play the Pogues for them. They're very into some, and they know Radiohead, which is they know Tom Waits. Anything we listen to, they listen to.
Tom Waits was a guest of Visual Radio at one point.
Get out of here.
By phone.
Cool.
By phone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have, different people come in. But that's neat that you appreciate that music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I want them to be exposed to everything. Yeah, I want them to learn music and be,
It's important for them to have a wide range at the beginning. And then they can go off into whatever they like.
Right.
So if they hear a Tom Waits.
Hey, my son can pick them out in a second.
Or as Blowfish would say, Tom Waits and Helen Reddy. Helen's ready. Blowfish is a comedian friend of ours. But
so then I was a philosophy major. And took a year off, lived in New York, and then went to graduate school in Michigan for MFA, and then have just been working steadily since.
So graduate school in Michigan was a lot different from Connecticut.
Bigger, of course, yeah. It was at that time and it still is a very prestigious program. I was lucky to get in, and small class, and those people, it was 20 years ago, but those people are still. I talk to them every other day, my classmates. So we've all sort of come up together, yeah.
But it's different now because you have Facebook.
Yeah.
And, and you have email. So it's easy to stay in touch with people you want to stay in touch with.
Absolutely.
Where before you might get letters and all of a sudden people drift away.
Well, I even think of that in, when I studied abroad my junior year of college, and I remember I was in Vienna, and it was before the fall of the wall, and it was...
Before, okay.
It was 87. So it was like very lonely time. And I think of kids now that go abroad, you're never really that far away from being able to talk to people. You know, a phone call home was like $70 at times, and I could not afford that.
Now you can Skype.
Now you Skype, now you email, now you send pictures back and forth Facebook. There's a lot to be gained for that interconnectedness, but you also never get, I don't know if you ever get really lonesome in the same manner. Do you know what I mean?
You can self-disconnect. You can just like unplug and go off to a mountain.
If you can.
It's hard because it is addictive.
Like I do this thing, Vipassana meditation, which is what the Buddha did.
Say it again.
Vipassana meditation. Okay. There's a place in Shelburne Falls, and there's a 10-day retreat. And so you are it's literally noble silence. You are meditating for 13 hours a day, and you're cut off. And what you realize is the world goes on without you, and you go on without the world. And it's sort of like you go through this mini death, which is actually very liberating. Like all this stuff that we think of as so important is entertainment. You know, and so it refocuses you on what's mission critical for what you really want to do in your life. Be it do a TV show, or be it write a book, or, you know, so it's because sometimes you get thrown off course by other people's desires for you.
Well, I think that we're entertainment for whatever, the spirits or the aliens who are here from another time, and they just, I just, that's my only explanation for the human condition.
That's cool.
Because we're not the smartest, and we're not the biggest race, and we're not the smallest race, but I think that we are probably the most interesting species of any, because we're so stupid sometimes.
Yeah, and so full of heart. We are full of heart, if nothing else.
You know, we're so blind that we stumble around, and we must be fascinating to, as my friend David Bieber says, the cosmic 2-year-old. You know, who just plays with us in this fishbowl.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that your book and this show lasts beyond all that. That, you know, it becomes a fixed part of the universe.
Yep. And we're given permission to do what we love, which is nice. And sometimes hard-earned, but, well, you know, I appreciate it when we are.
That's true if we don't live in the Matrix. But, so Vienna must have been a good experience for writing.
It was great. You know, my hero at the time was John Irving, so he had studied the same program, so I followed his footsteps. Was able to see his admissions letters and stuff, you know, his essays. It was fun, and I wanted to travel east, so I got to travel through Romania and Yugoslavia at the time, and just as far east as I could get.
A well-traveled man. A well-traveled man, that's good.
Yeah, and I've gone to Burma 7 times now. That's my next novel's set in Myanmar, so that's what I'm going about doing. I don't speak Burmese.
Do you speak other languages?
German and some Spanish.
So my next question is, are these books in other languages?
The Wasp Eater is. I don't know about The Architect yet.
But it's new.
Yeah, it doesn't come out until the 23rd officially.
Oh, so we've got this before.
You've got the scoop.
Oh, 23rd, and today's the 21st, so it comes out on Wednesday.
Yep, and I guess the Globe is going to do a big review, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. And
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What languages in the Wasp Eater in?
I think German, Japanese. I don't even know.
Japanese. Have you seen the cover? Did they mail it to you?
I never, no.
Oh, you should get them to mail it to you.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Because you got to have it up on the shelf.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I ask many of our writers, you know, because it's fascinating to me that, you know, you get your book and it's in Japanese and you don't know what they're saying with they could have rewritten the whole thing and you won't know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a few stories in this collection that a friend, an editor in Tehran, we've become pen pals, and he's translated, he edits books, so he's translated a bunch of those stories into Farsi, and it's fascinating to see, because I've seen some of those books come back, and it's just like...
So if that's already done, maybe he can have them in magazines over there, or has he?
I think he has, and there's no copyright laws in
Tehran?
Yeah, and they just don't respect our copyright laws, so they do
whatever they want.
Yeah,
So Beatles records are on the street.
I believe so. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never
yeah, Interesting. We're talking to William Lychak, the architect of flowers, wasp eater, and the website is lychack.com, which is very cool. William's got his own last name as the website, and you're going to be speaking.
A lot of places. My next South Hadley, is my next event at the Odyssey Bookstore. But I have 20 events all in the area, from Portsmouth to Andover to Putnam, Connecticut, Providence, Rhode Island.
And you were up in Andover teaching, or
I was a writer in residence for 4 years at Phillips Academy.
Writer in residence.
Yep.
And we got a couple of minutes left. What does a writer in residence do?
He or she teaches 2 workshops and is given free time to complete their work. So I was able to complete the short story collection while I was there.
This one.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Oh, and our final question before we get the signal. With the recording artists, I asked the demo that got the deal. How did you get signed?
It was a 2-book deal, and I sent my agent. There's a lot of rejection. They don't call it submission for nothing, so you're always getting rejected. Yeah. So I sent a book out that was probably 4 times longer than this book, and it was told in first, second, third person, but it was a complete draft. And then they bought it, and I had already been in Best American, and I had some good success publishing short stories. So it was a 2-book.
But your
offer.
agent sent out
Yeah.
And the rejections came in,
and she would call every time there was a rejection, and I'd be like, Marley, can you please just call on Friday, and we'll call it Black Friday, because you can do nothing with that information at that point except sync your day. So it was just a process, and there's an editor. She's in charge of Best American Short Stories now, Heidi Pittler, and she bought both books, and it's been really an angel on my shoulder the whole time through this.
That's very cool.
Yep.
And here we are today. You're on visual radio, and this book, like I said, it feels good, it looks good, the stories are great. So they did a great job packaging your work.
Yes. Yes.
And it's nice to have you out there on tour and here today. And I'm glad you got to read a little bit about it, a little bit from it. Sorry for stumbling. And I just really enjoyed jumping into it, and that you've got it so succinct. I just think that's important. Will you be working on?
I do as well. I want to chime in and just say I really do. I know I value my time a great deal, and I value my readers' time, and who am I to presume their time? And so I want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row for somebody.
Are you working on the next one?
I am. My editor gave me a deadline of 1 year, so I'm going to try to get my next book done in the year. By this time next year.
Deadline of 1 year, so get that work done.
Yeah. And that book took 20 years, so this book took 10.
Oh.
So I need to change my first story in there was 1991, so that's a long gestation period.
I'm going to ask how much time we have, because we're a 55-minute show. We get 2 minutes left. Oh, good, because time is on my side. We've covered everything except for, if a movie came out of this, who would you want to do the soundtrack? If a movie came out of The Architect of Flowers, or they could even do like the collection of short stories, like a Twilight Zone thing, where they do 5 or 6 of them. What would be your favorite? Or maybe you don't want to go there.
Oh, we can dream. I like Radiohead a great deal. Tom Waits would be awesome. It's very Tom Waitsy stuff. He's on my mind all the time.
Or a combination, or all of them.
Yeah, I like sort of. Who knows?
Or if the director had the vision, you have Radiohead doing one of the short stories, Tom Waits doing another.
That'd be fun.
And then Helen Reddy doing another.
There you go.
She's got to have a comeback,
I'm there for her.
When you're welcome to come back here. We're on Friday nights, 8 o'clock live.
Great.
So if you're in the area and you want to drop in on a Friday night, we're here.
I'd love to.
And you update us on what you're doing at the other stores, you know, if you're
Okay.
meeting interesting people. I especially want to know if any of your heroes have read your book and what they have to say about them.
Yes.
What was your favorite comment that you got on Wasp Eater?
Believe it or not, Clive Cussler, the writer.
Okay.
He's very famous, writes 2 or 3 books a year. Dirk Pitt, and he called me after this came out, and so we've become pen pals.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so he's been a real influence on how to build an audience and how to go about the business of this.
Well, thanks for being on the show. I want to thank Dave Gauthier and Joe LaRocca and Anthony Gamari, everyone here at WinCam for having William Lychak on Visual Radio with me, Joe Viglione, and thanks for tuning in.
Another minute